Stop helping everyone who asks. Some of them are using you, and you don't even realize it. And the worst part, you're the one allowing it. The more you help, the more some of them lose respect for you. You think you're a good person for helping others, but certain people, they see you as easy to use. Not everyone who asks for your help actually needs it. Some people need something else entirely. They need your energy, your time, your loyalty, and they will take it with a smile on their face and nothing in their hands when they leave. The worst part? You let them. You called it kindness. You called it being a good person. But here is what Machiavelli understood centuries ago, and what most people are never taught. Generosity without discernment is not a virtue. It is a vulnerability. It makes you easy to use. And there are certain types of people in your life right now who are built to exploit exactly that. 6 of them, to be precise. Not strangers, not enemies. People you trust. People you've helped before. People you would help again tomorrow without thinking twice. This video is going to change that. Not by making you cold, not by turning you into someone who closes the door on everyone, but by giving you a filter, a Machiavellian filter, that separates the people who genuinely deserve your investment from the ones quietly draining it. And this is where it gets dangerous. Before we get to the 6, there's one principle threading through all of them. One idea Machiavelli returned to again and again. We'll come back to it. But first, you need to see the patterns, because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Let's start with the one who looks the most like a friend. The chronic victim. You know this person. Everything happens to them. The job was unfair. The relationship was impossible. The opportunity vanished before they could reach it. Every story ends the same way, with them at the bottom and the world above pressing down. You listen. You empathize. You give advice, resources, introductions, and nothing changes. Here's what most people don't realize about the chronic victim. They are not trying to solve the problem. The problem is the product. Read that again. The problem is the product. It keeps people close. It generates attention, pity, loyalty. Psychologists call this secondary gain, the unconscious reward a person receives from staying in pain. Not laziness, not weakness, a system. And your compassion is the fuel that keeps it running. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who relies on the goodwill of others, without structure beneath it, will not stand. The same logic applies to people. Someone who builds their entire identity around being helped has no incentive to build anything else. Every time you rescue them, you confirm the story. You become a character in it. And in that story, you don't get to leave. The moment you stop rescuing, you become the villain. You've seen it. You've felt it. That's not a coincidence. That's the design. Understand this. Helping someone who doesn't want to change is not kindness. It's participation in the architecture of their stagnation. Your help is keeping them exactly where they are, and they need you to keep doing it. And this is where it gets even darker. Chronic victims often construct elaborate narratives around their suffering. They rewrite history in real time to maintain the victim position. A decision they made becomes something that was done to them. An opportunity they declined becomes a door that was closed in their face. Watch carefully. They never take credit for success, but they always blame external forces for failure. This isn't accidental, it's protective. Because the moment they admit agency in their problems, they also admit agency in solving them. And that admission would require something terrifying to them: change. It would require action. It would require standing up and building something instead of waiting for rescue. The chronic victim has unconsciously decided that maintaining the illusion of helplessness is safer than risking the work of becoming independent. So what does that make you in this equation? You are not a helper. You are a life support system. The moment you disconnect, the system fails. And they will make sure you know that your withdrawal caused the collapse. That guilt you feel? That's by design. Now let's talk about the one who's harder to identify. The scoreboard keeper. On the surface, this person seems generous. They do things for you. They show up. They contribute. But here's the catch. Every favor comes with a ledger entry. They remember everything they've given, every ride, every reference, every moment of support. And they wait. Not always consciously. But the moment you don't deliver what they expected, the moment you say no, or you're unavailable, or you simply move in a different direction, the invoice arrives. The relationship shifts. There's a coldness, a distance, sometimes a comment designed to make you feel the debt. This is transactional connection dressed in the language of friendship, and it's one of the most exhausting dynamics you can be inside of. Here's the psychological truth beneath it. The scoreboard keeper doesn't trust love that isn't earned. Somewhere early on, they learned that care has conditions, that you have to perform to receive. So they perform, and they expect the same performance in return. You're not a friend to them, you're a contract, and contracts have terms. The problem is you never agreed to those terms. You never saw the document. You were just living your life and suddenly you're in breach. Machiavelli was precise about this. He understood that relationships built on mutual obligation without genuine loyalty are fragile structures. They collapse under the first real pressure. So stop investing heavily in people who are secretly measuring your return. Here's what makes the scoreboard keeper so insidious. They often aren't aware of their own system. They genuinely believe they're being generous. They've internalized the narrative so thoroughly that the ledger feels like simple honesty to them. When they mention what they've done for you, it sounds like casual conversation. But it's never casual. It's strategic recall. It's a reminder embedded in seemingly innocent dialogue. And because they're not deliberately calculating in their own mind, it's harder for you to call out. You can't accuse someone of coldness when they're expressing what feels, to them, like reasonable concern about reciprocity. But reasonable to them isn't reasonable. It's conditioned. And that conditioning gets passed on to you through the medium of relationship. The scoreboard keeper teaches you slowly that connection is currency, that what you give will be tracked, that kindness without return is foolish. And if you stay in that relationship long enough, you internalize it. You start keeping score too. You become like them. That's perhaps the greatest damage the scoreboard keeper does. They don't just drain you, they replicate themselves inside you before you leave. There's a third type, and this one is subtle. The identity borrower. This is the person who attaches themselves to your momentum, your vision, your growth. In the beginning, it feels like alignment. They're excited about what you're building. They echo your ideas back to you. They want to be part of it. But over time, something shifts. They aren't building anything of their own. They are existing in proximity to yours. Your identity becomes their identity. Your network, their network. Your reputation, their credibility. And because of that proximity, they start to feel entitled. They give opinions about your decisions as if they are co-authors. They introduce themselves using your name as context. They begin to resent you the moment your trajectory separates from theirs. Jung called this psychological merger, the collapse of self-boundaries where one person absorbs the identity of another to fill an internal void. The identity borrower isn't malicious. That's what makes it complicated. They genuinely believe in the connection. But the connection is one-directional. You are carrying them, and the weight of that shows up in subtle ways. You start editing yourself around them. You stop sharing certain updates. You feel guilt for succeeding while they're still standing still. That guilt? It's information. It's telling you the relationship has become lopsided in a way that's beginning to cost you. Your growth is not a resource to be shared freely. Protect it. Here's what most people miss about the identity borrower. They create a particular kind of dependency that feels almost symbiotic. They mirror your ambitions so effectively that you mistake the reflection for genuine parallel growth. But observation reveals the pattern. When you succeed, they celebrate loudly, but they celebrate by association. Your win becomes their win by proxy. When you struggle, they're supportive, but their support comes with a subtle insistence on staying close to your process. They need to be involved. They need to understand every decision. They need to be consulted. Because in their mind, they're invested in the outcome. But they're not investing anything except their presence. And slowly, your boundaries weaken. You start including them in conversations you'd normally keep private. You seek their input on decisions that are purely yours to make. You rationalize this as collaboration when it's actually extraction. The identity borrower is slowly borrowing not just your identity, but your autonomy. By the time you recognize it, you've already built a narrative where you two are a team. Extracting yourself from that feels like breaking a commitment. That's the trap. Let's go darker. The fourth type is the one most people are most afraid to name. The manipulative flatterer. This person makes you feel exceptional, seen, understood. They praise your intelligence, they admire your clarity, they tell others how much they respect you, and it feels good. It's supposed to. Flattery isn't accidental, it's targeted. It lands precisely where your insecurity lives. Do you want to be respected? They respect you loudly. Do you want to be seen as strong? They tell others you're the most capable person they know. And this is where it gets dangerous. Machiavelli was direct about flatterers. He called them one of the most dangerous forces a leader could invite close. Not because they lie about small things, but because they make you believe a version of yourself that serves them. A flattered mind is a manageable mind. When you believe someone truly sees your greatness, you become more likely to help them, to trust them, to defend them. You extend yourself further than you normally would. And that extension, that overreach, is exactly where they need you. The test is simple. Tell them something you genuinely got wrong. Watch the response. Does the praise hold? Or does it suddenly become conditional? The true flatterer cannot absorb your fallibility, because the version of you they've invested in is the useful version. The flawed one doesn't serve their purpose. If the admiration vanishes when you're honest about your limits, that admiration was never about you. It was about what you could do for them. Here's what no one teaches you about flattery. The manipulative flatterer operates on a deep principle of human psychology that most people are never trained to recognize. We have an internal narrative about ourselves that is often less generous than the truth. You might know you're intelligent, but you suspect you're not intelligent enough. You might know you're capable, but you wonder if you're truly exceptional. The flatterer finds those gaps, and they fill them with precision. They don't claim you're good, they claim you're unusual. They don't say you're hardworking, they say you're visionary. They take the territories of your self-doubt and colonize them with certainty. And because the certainty comes from outside yourself, it feels objective. It feels like they're seeing something you couldn't see because you were too close to it. But what they're actually doing is selling you a version of yourself you want to believe in so desperately that you'll make space for them in your life to keep receiving the affirmation. The mechanism is perfect in its cruelty because it's voluntary. You invite them closer specifically because they make you feel better about yourself. You pay them with your time and energy and trust because the currency they're offering, validation, is something you've been starving for. And that's exactly what makes it so hard to walk away. This leads us to the fifth, the one who shows up specifically when your resources are visible. The fair weather ally. They are present when things are going well, when you have influence, when your projects are gaining traction, when you're being talked about. They are engaged, energized, available. Then something shifts. The season changes. You're between chapters, you're rebuilding. The projects slow down, the visibility drops, and suddenly, this person is very busy. They don't disappear dramatically. That would be too obvious. They fade. They respond slower. The energy in conversation drops by half. They have reasons. They're going through something. Life is complicated right now, and you believe it because it's plausible. But here's what most people don't realize. The fair weather ally isn't a bad person. They are operating on a very old and very human principle, social investment theory. We invest in relationships that offer return. That's not cynical, that's biological. The problem is that most people never say this out loud. They disguise calculation as affection. They call it friendship, while the math is running silently in the background. When you're at your lowest, when you actually need someone, these people are the first to go quiet. And their absence tells you something precise. It tells you the relationship was never built for your benefit. It was built around your utility. That's not a relationship worth protecting. That's a network contact you've been calling a friend. And here's the part that really stings. The fair weather ally teaches you something important if you're willing to learn it. They teach you that visibility is currency in how people value you. The moment your stock drops, so does their interest. And this has a cascading effect on your own psychology. You start to believe at some level that your worth is tied to your output. You start to feel like you need to maintain a certain level of success just to keep people interested in you. You become exhausted from the performance. The fair-weather ally doesn't just leave you when things get hard. They subtly convince you that you should be ashamed if things do get hard. Because good people, people worth knowing, don't struggle. They succeed. And if you're struggling, maybe you're not as valuable as you thought. This is the psychological damage beneath the simple fading away. It reinforces imposter syndrome. It deepens the anxiety about whether you truly deserve your place. That's not friendship, that's erosion. And then there is the sixth, the most corrosive of all. The guilt architect. This person doesn't take from you openly. They construct the conditions under which you feel obligated to give, and they do it without raising their voice once. They use silence as leverage, withdrawal as pressure, disappointment as a weapon so finely sharpened you don't even feel the cut until hours later. You try to create a boundary, and suddenly they go quiet. Not angry, just distant, hurt. You can feel the weight of it in your chest before you've even fully processed what happened. You try to take a step back and they say, very calmly, very softly, "It's fine, I'll handle it myself." And now you're the one apologizing. You don't even know what you did wrong, but you're doing it anyway because the guilt is unbearable. That's not communication, that's architecture. The guilt architect builds invisible rooms around you. You move through them without realizing the walls exist until you try to leave. The psychology underneath it is rooted in attachment theory. Specifically, anxious attachment paired with high emotional intelligence. These are people who learned early that direct requests get denied. So they found other ways: emotional pressure, implication, strategic helplessness. They're not always aware they're doing it. That doesn't make it less precise. Machiavelli observed that the most effective forms of control are the ones the controlled never recognize as control. The guilt architect embodies this. So hear this clearly. Do not apologize for protecting your energy from someone who has learned to make your boundaries feel like cruelty. Here's what makes the guilt architect the most dangerous of all six. Their primary tool is the art of the dramatic withdrawal. They don't yell, they don't threaten. They simply make their hurt so visible that you become responsible for managing their emotional state. You find yourself apologizing not because you actually did something wrong, but because you can't bear the weight of their disappointment. And this creates an invisible contract. You stay close not because you want to, but because stepping away feels cruel. The guilt architect has essentially weaponized your empathy. They've turned your capacity to feel for others into a mechanism of control. And the terrifying part is that they've likely done this unconsciously, learned it from their own past, where the only way to keep people close was to make leaving feel like abandonment. But unconscious doesn't mean harmless. It means you're dealing with a pattern, not a person. The pattern will continue until you step outside of it, and stepping outside of it will activate the guilt response at maximum intensity. That's when you'll know you're doing the right thing. The resistance is the proof. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to announce the shift. You don't need to explain yourself or justify your distance. The most powerful move is quiet. You simply redirect your investment, slowly, deliberately, without drama. You stop over-explaining your decisions. You stop rescuing situations that aren't yours to rescue. You stop making yourself available at the cost of your own momentum. You let the relationship find its natural level without your constant effort holding it up. And here's what will happen. Some relationships will drop away, fast. The ones built on your utility will dissolve the moment the utility is withdrawn. That's painful, but it's also information. And some relationships will remain, not because they need something from you, but because they actually want to be in your presence. Those are the ones worth protecting. Those are the ones worth investing in fully, without reservation, without calculation. Machiavelli was not teaching people to be cold. He was teaching people to be clear. Clarity about who serves the relationship and who simply serves themselves. Clarity about the difference between connection and convenience, between loyalty and leverage, between care and transaction. You already knew some of this. You felt it in situations you couldn't quite name. You've sensed the imbalance before you had the language for it. That sense was not paranoia. That was pattern recognition. And now you have the framework to trust it. What you carry after this should not be suspicion. It should be clarity. And clarity is not just protective, it's powerful. But here is what no one tells you about that kind of power. It comes with a cost. Because once you start seeing these patterns, you cannot stop. You'll see them in old friendships, in family dynamics, in professional relationships you thought were solid. And some of what you see will be uncomfortable. Some of it will require decisions you've been avoiding for a long time. That's the real weight of awareness. It doesn't make life simpler. It makes it more honest. And honest is harder, but it's the only way through. So don't learn to filter without being ready to act on what you find. Because the next layer of this, the next level of strategic intelligence, goes even deeper. It's not just about who to stop helping. It's about how to think in ways most people are structurally unable to think. 7 ruthless lessons. Machiavelli's framework for becoming genuinely, dangerously clear. Not aggressive, not manipulative, just smarter than the room, in ways that compound over time. That next video is already waiting. But before you go there, ask yourself honestly if you're ready for what it shows you, because some people aren't. If this resonated, if it named something you've been carrying without words, say so in the comments. I read them. And if you want to keep going deeper into this way of thinking, make sure you're subscribed. There's more coming, and it builds on itself.